The ticket in her hand was worth $12,000, a first-class suite on the inaugural flight of the Skylark A350. But to the crew of Flight 808, 17-year-old Maya looked like a mistake. She didn't fit their profile of wealth. She was young, black, and dressed in a vintage hoodie. They thought they could bully her. They thought they could silence her. They moved her to the back of the plane to please an entitled billionaire, unaware that the airline they worked for didn't just belong to a corporation. It belonged to her father. And he was watching the security feed live. The tarmac at JFK International Airport shimmered under the hazy heat of a July afternoon. Inside the terminal, the air was conditioned to a crisp, sterile chill, smelling faintly of expensive coffee and duty-free perfume. Maya Thorne adjusted the strap of her canvas backpack. It was an old thing, frayed at the edges, covered in patches from national parks and indie bands. It stood in stark contrast to the sleek, hard-shell Rimowa luggage gliding across the polished floors around her. Maya didn't care. She checked her boarding pass on her phone again, just to be sure. Seat 1A, first-class suite. She took a deep breath. This wasn't just a flight, it was a test run. Her father, Alexander Thorne, the reclusive titan behind Thorne Global and the newly acquired Apex Airlines, had asked her to fly commercial. He wanted eyes on the ground, or rather, eyes in the sky. He wanted to know how his new acquisition was treating its customers when they thought the boss wasn't looking. "Just be yourself, Mia," he had told her that morning over breakfast at their estate in the Hamptons. "Don't flash the black card. Don't mention my name. Just fly. See how they treat you." Maya approached the gate for Apex Airlines, Flight 808 to London Heathrow. The line for economy was a serpentine mass of tired travellers, but the lane for first and business class was empty, save for a velvet rope and a pristine red carpet. She stepped onto the red carpet. "Excuse me, miss." The voice was sharp, like the crack of a whip. A gate agent, a tall woman with her blonde hair pulled back so tightly it looked painful, stepped out from behind the podium. Her name tag read Brenda. "The line for Zone 4 is back there," Brenda said, pointing a manicured finger toward the chaotic economy queue without even looking at Maya's face. "Please don't block the premier access." Maya paused, her expression neutral. She was used to this. The assumption that she didn't belong in certain spaces was a background noise she had learned to tune out, though it never ceased to sting. "I'm not in Zone 4, Maya said softly. She held up her phone, displaying the QR code. "I'm in Zone 1. Brenda blinked. She looked at the phone, then at Maya's hoodie, then down at her scuffed Converse sneakers. A sneer tugged at the corner of her mouth, so subtle it was almost professional. "Let me see that," Brenda said, snatching the phone from Maya's hand rather than scanning it. She squinted at the screen, scrolling up and down, as if looking for the forgery. She typed something into her terminal, her acrylic nails clicking aggressively against the keys. "Seat 1A?" Brenda scoffed. "This is a full-fare first-class ticket. Booked under. Thorne?" "Yes," Maya said. Brenda looked at her colleague, a younger man named Kyle, who looked uncomfortable. "System error," she muttered to him. "There's no way this kid booked a $12,000 seat. It's probably an upgrade glitch or a non-rev pass gone wrong." "It scanned green, Brenda," Kyle whispered. "Just let her board." Brenda pursed her lips. She handed the phone back to Maya, wiping the screen on her blazer sleeve as if it were dirty. "Fine. Boarding is that way. Try not to hold up the actual business travelers." Maya took her phone back, her grip tightening slightly. "Thank you, Brenda," she said, reading the name tag deliberately. She walked down the jet bridge, her heart rate steady but her mind racing. Her father had warned her that the culture at Apex Airlines needed cleaning up. She hadn't realized the rot started at the gate. When she stepped onto the plane, the atmosphere changed. The first-class cabin on the new Apex A350 was a masterpiece of engineering. There were only 8 suites, each with a sliding privacy door, a lie-flat bed, and a 32-inch 4K screen. The lighting was a soft, calming violet. A flight attendant stood at the door, holding a tray of champagne flutes. She was striking, with immaculate makeup and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Her name tag read, Vanessa. "Welcome aboard," Vanessa said, scanning Maya's outfit. The smile faltered. "Economy is through the galley. Keep going to the back." "I'm in 1A, Maya said, stepping toward the suite to her left. Vanessa stepped in front of her, blocking the path. "Miss, please. We are trying to conduct a pre-flight service for our first-class guests. I need you to keep moving so you don't block the aisle." "I am a first-class guest," Maya stated, her voice hardening. She was done being polite. She stepped around Vanessa and dropped her battered backpack onto the hand-stitched Italian leather seat of Suite 1A. Vanessa gasped audibly. "You cannot put that bag there. That leather is imported." "It's my seat," Maya said, sitting down and crossing her legs. She looked up at the flight attendant. "I'd like a sparkling water with lime, please. Or is the pre-flight service only for people wearing suits?" Vanessa's face went flushed. She looked like she was about to explode, but at that moment, a heavy shadow fell over the aisle. "Is there a problem here?" a deep, booming voice asked. Maya looked up. Standing in the aisle was a man who looked like he owned the building, if not the city. He was in his 50s, wearing a charcoal 3-piece suit that probably cost more than Maya's entire wardrobe. He had silver hair, a thick gold watch, and an air of impatience that sucked the oxygen out of the room. "Mr. Sterling!" Vanessa's demeanor flipped instantly. She melted into a subservient, flirtatious posture. "Welcome back, sir. So good to see you again. We have your usual scotch ready." Mr. Sterling didn't look at Vanessa. He was staring at Maya, or rather, he was staring at Maya sitting in his vicinity. "Who is this?" Sterling asked, gesturing to Maya with a flick of his wrist. "I thought I bought out the A row for privacy. Why is there a child in the cabin?" "We are sorting it out, sir," Vanessa stammered, shooting a glare at Maya. "There seems to be a booking anomaly." "I don't pay $20,000 for a round trip to sit across from a teenager in a hoodie," Sterling spat. He leaned in, his cologne overpowering the cabin's air filtration. "Get her out of here. I have a meeting to prepare for, and I don't want to smell fast food and poverty." Maya felt a cold spike of anger in her chest. She turned her head, meeting Sterling's gaze. "I paid for this ticket, sir. Just like you. And for the record, I don't eat fast food." Sterling laughed. It was a cruel, barking sound. "You paid? With whose credit card? Did you steal it? Or is this some charity case giveaway?" He turned to Vanessa. "Get the purser. Now. If she isn't gone before the doors close, I'm calling the CEO. I know him personally, you know." Maya almost smiled. "You know the CEO?" she thought. "That's funny, because I had cereal with him 3 hours ago." But she stayed silent. She wanted to see how far they would go. The conflict in the cabin didn't de-escalate. It festered. Vanessa hurried to the galley and returned moments later with the lead purser, a man named Roger. Roger had the weary, harried look of a man who had dealt with too many difficult passengers and had decided that the path of least resistance was always to side with the platinum card holder. Roger adjusted his tie and approached Suite 1A. He didn't introduce himself to Maya. He didn't ask for her name. He simply leaned over the partition, invading her personal space. "Miss," Roger said, his voice dripping with faux patience. "We have a situation. This suite is technically reserved for our global elite members. It seems the system allowed you to book it in error." "It wasn't an error," Maya said calmly. "I selected the seat. I paid the fare. I have the boarding pass." "Look," Roger sighed, lowering his voice. "Mr. Sterling is one of our most valued clients. He requires absolute quiet and privacy to conduct his business. We have a very comfortable seat for you in Economy Plus. It has extra legroom. I can even offer you a meal voucher." "You want to downgrade me?" Maya asked, raising an eyebrow. "I paid for first. I'm not moving to Economy Plus for a meal voucher." "It's not a request, kid," Mr. Sterling interrupted. He had taken his seat in 2A, directly behind her, but was standing up again, looming over the partition. "This airline has standards. You are disrupting the ambiance. You clearly don't belong here." "What is the standard exactly?" Maya asked, looking Sterling in the eye. "Is the standard middle-aged white men only? Because I didn't see that on the website." The cabin went silent. A passenger across the aisle, a kind-looking older woman reading a magazine, gasped softly. Sterling's face turned a violent shade of red. "You listen to me, you little brat. I run a hedge fund that manages assets larger than the GDP of most countries. I don't argue with children. Roger, get her off this plane. I don't just want her moved. I want her gone. She's belligerent." Roger looked panicked. He knew removing a passenger was a massive headache, paperwork-wise. But angering Marcus Sterling was worse. Sterling spent $500,000 a year with Apex. "Miss," Roger said, his voice harder now, "I need to see your ID and your boarding pass again." Maya handed them over. Roger looked at the ID. Maya Thorne. The name didn't ring a bell for him. The airline had only been acquired by Thorne Global 2 weeks ago, and the transition was still happening at the corporate level. The staff knew the name Thorne Global, but they didn't know the family tree. Alexander Thorne was notoriously private. He kept his family out of the tabloids. There were no pictures of his daughter on Google Images. "Thorne," Sterling muttered. "Probably some illegitimate child of a rapper." "Look at her." Maya picked up her phone. She unlocked it and opened her text messages. She tapped on the thread pinned at the top. "Dad." Maya. "They are trying to kick me out. One passenger, Sterling, is demanding it. Crew is siding with him. Location: JFK, Flight 808. She saw the 3 dots appear instantly, then a reply. "Dad, stay in the seat. Don't move. I'm calling the ops center." Maya locked her phone and looked at Roger. "I am not moving, and if you touch me or my property, I will file a lawsuit that will make your head spin." "A lawsuit?" Sterling laughed, pouring himself a drink from the pre-departure bottle he had grabbed from Vanessa's cart. "With what lawyer? The public defender?" "Sir, please sit down," Roger told Sterling, but his tone was pleading, not commanding. He turned back to Maya. "Miss, the captain has been informed. We are declaring you a security risk due to non-compliance." "Non-compliance?" Maya asked. "I'm sitting in my assigned seat." "You are refusing crew instructions to relocate," Roger said. "That is a federal offense. We can have the marshals escort you off." "Do it," Maya challenged him. "Call the marshals." She knew the marshals would check the manifest properly. She knew the marshals would see who purchased the ticket. But Roger didn't want the delay of calling law enforcement. He wanted a quick fix. Roger grabbed Maya's backpack from the seat. "Hey!" Maya shouted, reaching for it. "We are moving your bag to row 45, Roger said, walking briskly down the aisle toward the back of the plane. "You can follow your bag, or you can fly without it." "That's theft," Maya said, unbuckling her seatbelt. "It's luggage handling," Vanessa sneered from the galley. "Go on. Bye-bye." Sterling clapped his hands mockingly. "Finally. Excellent service, Vanessa. Make sure to comp my drink for the disturbance." Maya stood up in the aisle. She was shaking, not with fear, but with the adrenaline of pure injustice. She looked at the empty seat where her bag had been. She looked at Sterling, who was now settling in, opening his laptop as if she didn't exist. "You're making a mistake," Maya said, her voice steady but carrying through the quiet cabin. "A very expensive mistake." "The only mistake was letting you through security," Sterling muttered without looking up. Maya turned and walked toward the back of the plane. She wasn't defeated. She was regrouping. As she passed through the curtain, separating first from business and then business from economy, the eyes of the other passengers followed her. Some looked sympathetic. Most just looked relieved it wasn't them. She found her bag shoved into an overhead bin in row 45, the very last row of the plane, right next to the lavatories. The seat didn't recline. The smell of chemical toilet fluid was already wafting through the air. She sat down, jamming her knees against the seat in front of her. She took out her phone. "Maya, I'm in row 45. They moved me. They took my bag. The passenger is Marcus Sterling. Dad. Sterling. I know him. He's shorting our stock. Hold on. The pilot is getting a message on A cars right now." Up in the cockpit, Captain James Miller was running through the pre-flight checklist. He was a veteran pilot, 20 years with the airline, and he just wanted an on-time departure. The ground crew had cleared the chocks. The tug was connected. Suddenly, the ACR's printer, the Aircraft Communications Addressing and Reporting System, began to whir. Usually these messages were routine weather updates or dispatch adjustments. But the printer didn't stop. It spit out a long strip of paper. "What's that?" the first officer, a young man named David, asked. "New load sheet?" Captain Miller tore the paper off and squinted at it. His eyes widened. The color drained from his face beneath his tan. "Holy Mother of," Miller whispered. "What?" David asked. "It's a priority message. Code red," Miller said, his voice trembling, from the chairman's office, directly from Alexander Thorne. "The new owner?" David asked. "What does he want?" "Read it," Miller said, handing the paper over. The message was in all caps. "Stop departure immediately. Return to gate. Do not disengage brakes. Flight attendant crew to remain on board. Law enforcement dispatched to gate A4. Identify passenger Maya Thorne in seat. A. Confirm status." "Maya Thorne?" David asked. "We don't have a VIP notification." "Check the manifest," Miller snapped. David pulled up the digital manifest on his iPad. He scrolled to 1A. "Seat 1A. Checked in. Wait. The purser moved her. The system shows a seat change to 45C, initiated 2 minutes ago by Admin Roger." Captain Miller cursed. He grabbed the interphone handset. "Roger to the flight deck. Now." Back in the cabin, Roger was feeling pleased with himself. He had diffused the situation, kept Mr. Sterling happy, and ensured the flight would leave on time. He was just popping a bottle of Dom Perignon for Sterling when the interphone chimed 3 times, the signal for an urgent cockpit call. He picked up the handset in the galley. "Cabin, Roger speaking." "Roger." Captain Miller's voice was like gravel. "Did you move a passenger from 1A?" "Yes, Captain," Roger said smoothly. "Disruptive teenager, dress code violation, and belligerent behavior. Mr. Sterling was threatened. I moved her to the back to ensure safety." "You moved who?" Miller asked, his voice rising. "Just some girl, no status. Last name Thorne," Roger said dismissively. There was a silence on the other end of the line, so heavy it felt like the plane had depressurized. "Roger," the captain said, very slowly. "Do you know who signs your paycheck?" "Apex Airlines," Roger said, confused. "Apex is a subsidiary of Thorne Global," the captain shouted. "The girl you just threw into the toilet row is Alexander Thorne's daughter, the owner of the damn airline." Roger dropped the handset. It swung by its cord, banging against the metal wall of the galley. Vanessa, who was plating warm nuts, looked up. "Roger, what's wrong? You look like you're having a heart attack." Roger couldn't speak. He looked through the curtain at the back of Mr. Sterling's head in seat 2A. Then he looked down the long, long aisle toward row 45. "We have to go back," Roger whispered. "What?" Vanessa asked. "The captain is turning the plane around," Roger said, his voice cracking. "That girl, she's the CEO's daughter." Vanessa froze. The plate of nuts slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor. At that moment, the plane lurched, but it didn't move backward. The engines spooled down. The PA system clicked on. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking." Miller's voice boomed through the cabin, sounding strained. "I apologize for the delay. We have been ordered by corporate headquarters to return to the gate immediately to deal with a security violation involving the mistreatment of a passenger. Please remain seated." In seat 2A, Marcus Sterling huffed. "Unbelievable, now we're going back. Probably to kick that brat off for good. Good riddance." He looked at Vanessa, who was standing in the aisle, pale as a ghost. "Hey, sweetie," Sterling said. "Top me off while we wait, and make sure the police are ready for her." Vanessa looked at Sterling with a look of pure horror. "The police aren't coming for her, Mr. Sterling," she whispered. "They're coming for us." The sensation of a plane turning back to the gate is distinct. It lacks the hopeful momentum of departure or the relief of arrival. It feels heavy, dragging, like an admission of failure. For the passengers of Flight 808, the confusion was palpable. For the crew, it was a funeral march. Captain Miller didn't taxi the plane with his usual efficiency. He moved the massive Airbus A350 slowly, every vibration of the engines serving as a countdown to a career-ending catastrophe. Inside the cockpit, the radio was buzzing with instructions from ground control, but the tone had shifted. Usually, ground control was brisk and impersonal. Now the controllers sounded hushed, respectful, and urgent. "Apex 808, you are cleared for immediate docking at Gate A4, the controller said. "Be advised, airport security and corporate assets are already on the jet bridge. Do not open the main cabin door until the lead vehicle signals." "Copy that," Miller said, his throat dry. He glanced at his first officer. "David, pack your bag. I don't think we're flying anywhere today." Back in the cabin, the atmosphere in first class had turned bizarrely surreal. Marcus Sterling, oblivious to the sword hanging over his head, was treating the delay as a personal inconvenience that could be solved with alcohol and complaints. "This is ridiculous," Sterling loudly announced to the cabin, clinking his ice against the glass. "One unruly child disrupts the entire schedule. I hope they bill her parents for the fuel. I intend to sue for lost time." He looked at Vanessa, who was standing by the galley curtain, trembling. Her hands were shaking so badly she had hidden them behind her back. "Why are you standing there?" Sterling snapped. "I asked for a refill 5 minutes ago. If we're stuck on the tarmac, keep the scotch flowing. That's the rule, isn't it?" Vanessa looked at him with hollow eyes. "I can't serve alcohol on the ground during a security event, sir." "Security event?" Sterling scoffed. "It's a brat in a hoodie. It's hardly a hijacking. Fine. I'll complain to Alexander Thorne himself. I'm seeing him at the charity gala next week. I'll tell him his staff is incompetent." Roger, the lead purser, stepped out of the galley. He looked like he had aged 10 years in 10 minutes. He had tried to check the passenger manifest on his tablet again to see if he could undo the seat change, to somehow magically restore Maya to 1A in the system logs. But the screen was locked. "Administrator override," it read. "Edit access revoked." He walked over to Sterling. "Mr. Sterling, please," Roger whispered, sweat beading on his upper lip. "Please keep your voice down." "Don't shush me," Sterling spat. You're the one who let her on board in the first place. You should have screened her out at the gate. Poverty has a smell, Roger. You should learn to recognize it." The plane shuddered to a halt. The fasten seatbelt sign pinged off. But nobody moved. Through the windows, the passengers could see the flashing lights of police cruisers on the tarmac below. But these weren't just airport security beat cops. There were black SUVs, Cadillac Escalades with tinted windows, pulling up right next to the stairs. "Look at that," Sterling laughed, peering out the window. "They brought the SWAT team for her. Good. Maybe she has a weapon. I told you she looked dangerous." The main cabin door thumped. The sound of the pressurized seal breaking echoed through the silent plane. Vanessa took a step back, pressing herself against the bulkhead. Roger adjusted his tie, trying to look authoritative, preparing his speech about the unruly passenger in 45C. The door swung open. It wasn't a standard gate agent who entered. It was a phalanx of uniformed officers from the Port Authority Police Department, led by a man in a sharp, navy blue suit. He wore an earpiece and moved with the precise, lethal grace of a Secret Service agent. This was Silas Vance, the head of security for Thorn Global. Sterling beamed. "Finally. Officers, back here. The problem is in the rear. She was threatening me, refused to leave my vicinity, likely intoxicated." Silas Vance didn't even blink. He didn't look at Sterling. He didn't look at Roger. He walked straight past the first-class suites as if they were empty furniture. "Secure the exits," Vance ordered the officers. 2 policemen stationed themselves at the front door. 2 more moved down the aisles to the emergency exits. "Hey!" Sterling shouted, standing up. "I'm talking to you. I am the victim here." Vance stopped. He turned his head slowly, his eyes scanning Sterling with cold detachment. "Sit down, sir. Interfere with a corporate recovery operation, and you will be detained." "Corporate recovery?" Sterling sputtered. "What are you talking about?" Vance ignored him and continued walking. He moved through business class, his footsteps heavy and rhythmic. He moved through economy plus. He moved through the crowded rows of economy, where tired families and tourists watched with wide eyes. Roger and Vanessa, realizing the security team wasn't stopping to debrief them, scrambled to follow. "Sir! Sir!" Roger called out, chasing after Vance. "I'm the lead purser. I can explain. The passenger in 45C was non-compliant with crew instructions regarding seating protocols. We followed standard procedure for—" Vance stopped abruptly in row 40. He turned on his heel, towering over Roger. "Standard procedure?" Vance asked, his voice low but carrying a terrifying weight. "Does standard procedure involve seizing the personal property of a minor? Does it involve publicly humiliating a paying customer? Does it involve lying to the captain about a security threat?" We didn't lie," Roger stammered. Mr. Sterling felt threatened. "Mr. Sterling's feelings are not flight regulations," Vance said. He turned back around and walked the final few rows to row 45. The back of the plane was grim. The air was stale. The noise of the auxiliary power unit was loud here, and there, squeezed into the window seat, knees pressed against the tray table, was Maya. She had her headphones on, staring out the window at the wing. She looked small. Vance's demeanor changed instantly. The cold, hard edge vanished, replaced by a deep, deferential respect. He bowed his head slightly. "Miss Thorne?" Vance said softly. Maya pulled down her headphones. She looked at Vance, then at the terrified Roger and Vanessa hovering behind him. She didn't smile. "Hi, Silas," she said. "Dad sent the cavalry?" "Your father is personally handling the extraction," Vance said. "He is currently entering the aircraft." A collective gasp went through the back of the plane. The passengers in row 44 turned around. "Thorne? Extraction?" "I'm fine, really," Maya said, unbuckling her seatbelt. They just took my bag, and my dignity, but mostly the bag. We have retrieved your bag from the bin, an officer said, stepping forward with the canvas backpack, holding it like it was a bag of diamonds. Vance extended a hand to help Maya out of the cramped seat. Please come with me. We are returning to the front. The chairman is waiting. Maya stood up. She smoothed down her hoodie. She looked at Roger, who was now trembling so violently he had to lean on a seat back for support. You know, Maya said to Roger, her voice calm and conversational, I tried to tell you. I showed you the ticket. I showed you the ID. You just didn't want to see it. I didn't know, Roger whispered. You thought I was nobody, Maya finished. That's the problem. She walked past him, leading the procession back up the aisle. It was the longest walk of Roger's life. He had to follow the girl he had bullied, flanked by police, back toward the first-class cabin where his career was about to end. When Maya and her entourage reached the curtain separating business from first class, the scene had shifted from confusion to absolute stillness. Standing in the galley, blocking the exit door, was Alexander Thorne. He was a man who commanded rooms simply by entering them. Tall, with broad shoulders and eyes that were famously described by Forbes magazine as predatory, he wore a simple black turtleneck and a blazer. He didn't look like a businessman. He looked like a titan. He wasn't yelling. He wasn't making a scene. He was simply standing there, looking at the empty seat in 1A, and then looking at Marcus Sterling in 2A. Sterling, for the first time, looked unsure. He recognized Alexander Thorne immediately. They moved in similar circles, though Thorne was the sun, and Sterling was merely a planet in orbit. Alexander! Sterling stood up, forcing a jovial smile, buttoning his suit jacket. My God, what a surprise! I was just telling your crew. Alexander Thorne held up one hand. The gesture was small, but it silenced Sterling instantly. Thorne looked past Sterling. He saw Maya emerging from the aisle, flanked by Vance and the police. His expression softened for a fraction of a second, a father's relief, before hardening back into diamond-edged anger as he looked at the crew. Maya, Thorne said, his voice deep and resonant. Are you hurt? No, Dad, Maya said, stepping into the first-class cabin. She stood next to her father. The resemblance was undeniable now that they were side by side. The same eyes, the same set of the jaw. Just humiliated. Humiliated, Thorne repeated the word, tasting the bitterness of it. He turned his gaze to Roger and Vanessa, who had been corralled into the galley by the police. You humiliated my daughter on her own aircraft? Vanessa burst into tears. Sir, please. We didn't know. She didn't look like a first-class passenger. We were just trying to protect the premium experience. The premium experience, Thorne said, stepping closer to Vanessa. She flinched. Is the premium experience defined by racism? Is it defined by judging a book by its cover? You saw a young black girl in a hoodie and decided she was trash. You didn't check the manifest properly. You didn't listen to her. You listened to him. Thorne pointed a finger at Sterling without looking at him. Now hold on a minute, Alex, Sterling interjected, his voice regaining some of its arrogance. Let's be reasonable. The girl was taking up a prime seat. I pay a lot of money to this airline. I expect a certain caliber of neighbor. I didn't know she was your spawn. If I had known, obviously, if you had known, you would have kissed her ring. Thorne cut him off, turning to face Sterling. But because you didn't know, you treated her like dirt. That tells me everything I need to know about your character, Marcus. It's a misunderstanding, Sterling insisted, sweating now. I was stressed. The market has been volatile. I needed quiet. I asked the crew to handle it. They are the ones who moved her. They moved her because you demanded it, Thorne said. I heard the cockpit voice recorder audio, Marcus. It's live streamed to ops. I heard you call her a charity case. I heard you threaten my staff with your influence. Thorne took a step closer to Sterling's suite. You like to throw your weight around, Marcus? You like to use your money to bully teenagers? Let's talk about money. Thorne pulled a phone from his pocket. He tapped the screen once. I just got off the phone with the Apex Board of Directors, Thorne said calmly. And my legal team. Legal team? Sterling laughed nervously. For a seat dispute? Come on, Alex. I'll send the girl a gift basket. Let's not be dramatic. You are currently sitting in a seat owned by Thorne Global, Alexander said. You are trespassing. I have a ticket, Sterling yelled. Not anymore, Thorne said. Your ticket has been voided. In fact, your entire account has been voided. Your miles, gone. Your status, revoked. You can't do that, Sterling said, his face turning purple. I'm a global elite member. I own the airline, Marcus. I can ban anyone I want. And as of 2 minutes ago, you are placed on the Apex no-fly list, permanently. And not just Apex. I've flagged your profile across the entire Alliance network. You won't be able to book a flight on a major carrier in North America or Europe by tomorrow morning. Sterling's mouth fell open. You're bluffing. You can't blackball a billionaire. Watch me, Thorne said. He nodded to the police officers. Officers, this man is trespassing on private property and refuses to leave. Please remove him. Wait, Sterling shrieked as 2 burly officers grabbed his arms. Get your hands off me. Do you know who I am? I will sue this entire airline into the ground. You're welcome to try, Thorne said coldly, but you'll be doing it from the train station. Sterling kicked and screamed as he was dragged out of the suite. His expensive loafers scraped across the floor, the same floor he had claimed Maya was too dirty to walk on. He was hauled down the aisle, past the staring eyes of the economy passengers he despised, screaming threats that nobody listened to. When the screaming faded into the jet bridge, the silence in the cabin was heavy. Thorne turned back to the crew. Roger and Vanessa were huddled together, looking like deer in headlights. Brenda, the gate agent who had started it all, had been brought onto the plane by security and was standing by the door, pale and silent. Now, Thorne said, his voice dropping to a terrifyingly quiet register, let's discuss your employment. Sir, Roger wept, falling to his knees. Literally, on his knees in the galley. I have a mortgage. I have 2 kids in college. Please, it was a mistake. I was pressured by Mr. Sterling. He's a VIP. We are trained to prioritize VIPs. You were trained to prioritize passengers, Thorne corrected him. You broke federal aviation regulations by moving a passenger against her will without a safety justification. You falsified a report to the captain, claiming she was a threat. Thorne looked at Maya. Maya, what do you want to do? Maya looked at Roger, groveling on the floor. She looked at Vanessa, whose mascara was running down her cheeks. She looked at Brenda, who was staring at the floor, unable to make eye contact. Maya felt a surge of pity, but it was quickly replaced by the memory of the shame she felt walking to row 45, the memory of Vanessa mocking her bag, the memory of Brenda sneering at her shoes. They didn't just break the rules, Dad, Maya said softly. They enjoyed it. They liked having the power to make me feel small. If they do it to me, they do it to everyone who doesn't look like a millionaire. Thorne nodded. He turned to Silas Vance. Pull their badges, Thorne ordered. Sir, Vanessa cried out. No, please. Badges, now, Vance barked. With shaking hands, Roger, Vanessa, and Brenda unclipped their ID badges, the access cards that allowed them through security, the symbols of their careers. They handed them to Vance. You are relieved of duty effective immediately, Thorne said. You will be escorted off the airport premises. Your personal belongings in the crew lockers will be mailed to you. Do not expect a reference." "But how will we get home?" Vanessa sobbed. "We live in New Jersey." "I suggest you take the bus," Thorne said, turning his back on them. "I hear it's very affordable." He gestured to the police to escort the former crew members off the plane. As they were led away, the remaining flight attendants, the ones who had been working in economy and hadn't participated in the bullying, watched in stunned silence. Thorne turned to the rest of the cabin. The other first-class passengers were staring, terrified that they might be next if they breathed too loudly. "I apologize for the delay," Thorne announced to the room, his voice projecting the charm that made him a CEO. "We will be assigning a new flight crew immediately. As compensation for the disturbance, every passenger on this flight will receive a voucher for a future round-trip ticket. Thank you for flying, Apex." He put his arm around Maya's shoulders. "Come on, Mia," he said gently. "Let's get you back to 1A. I think you've got a flight to catch." "Actually, Dad," Maya said, looking at the luxurious suite that had caused so much trouble, "I don't want to fly today. Not on this plane." Thorne looked at her, understanding filling his eyes. "Okay. What do you want to do?" "I want a burger," she said. "And I want to watch the security footage of Sterling getting dragged out." Thorne smiled, a genuine warm smile. "That can be arranged. Let's go to the private hangar. We'll take the Gulf Stream." As they walked off the plane, leaving the stunned passengers and the replacement crew behind, Maya looked back one last time at seat 1A. It was just a chair, but the lesson it had taught everyone on board would last a lifetime. However, the story wasn't over. The firing of the crew and the banning of Sterling was just the beginning. The internet was about to find out, and the real storm was just gathering on the horizon. Marcus Sterling sat in the back of a rented limousine. His usual private driver had been unavailable, a minor annoyance he attributed to bad luck, scrolling through his phone. He had been kicked off the plane 3 hours ago. He had screamed at the police, threatened lawsuits, and eventually had to charter a helicopter from a third-rate service just to get to his meeting in London on time. He was furious, but he wasn't worried. Men like Marcus Sterling didn't worry about consequences. They worried about optics, and he was already formulating the spin. The girl was hysterical. The airline overreacted. "I am the victim of woke corporate policies." He would have his lawyers draft a statement by morning. He poured himself a drink from the limo's minibar. "To resilience," he muttered to the empty car. His phone buzzed. It was his PR manager, Sarah. "Marcus, don't talk to anyone." Sarah's voice was breathless, panicked. "Relax, Sarah, I'm handling it. I'll sue Thorne for breach of contract." "You don't understand," Sarah practically screamed. "Check Twitter. Check everything. It's trending #1 worldwide." Sterling frowned. He opened the Twitter app. The #1 trend was Flight 038. The #2 trend was Sterling is trash. He clicked the first hashtag. A video popped up. It was shaky, clearly filmed from across the aisle by another passenger, likely the nice old lady who had been reading the magazine. The angle was perfect. It showed everything. It showed Sterling leaning over the partition, his face twisted in a snarl. "I don't argue with children. Roger, get her off this plane. I don't just want her moved. I want her gone. I don't want to smell fast food and poverty." It showed Roger grabbing the backpack. It showed Maya, calm and dignified, standing her ground. "I paid for this ticket, sir. Just like you." The video had been posted by a user named @TravelJustice only an hour ago. It already had 14 million views. Sterling felt a cold sweat break out on his forehead. "So what? It's out of context. Read the comments, Marcus," Sarah said on the line. He scrolled down. All user 1. "This guy is Marcus Sterling. CEO of Sterling Capital. He manages teacher pension funds. Is this who we trust with our money? User too. The audacity to say she smells like poverty when she's wearing a hoodie worth more than his soul. Disgusting. User 3. I was on that flight. He was drunk before we took off. The girl was an angel. He's a monster. It gets worse, Sarah said. Alexander Thorne didn't just fire the crew. He released a formal press statement 10 minutes ago. He didn't use corporate speak. He went nuclear. Sterling switched to the news app. There was the headline, Thorne Global CEO condemns elitist bigotry on Flight 808, releases security footage. Thorne hadn't just relied on the passenger video. He had released the cabin security footage, high definition, clear audio. It showed the entire interaction from the moment Maya boarded. It showed Vanessa sneering at the ticket. It showed Brenda at the gate. It showed the police dragging Sterling off while he screamed profanities. I need to go on TV, Sterling said, his hands shaking. Get me an interview. I need to apologize. I'll say I was on medication. I'll say I was having a panic attack. It's too late for an apology tour, Marcus, Sarah said, her voice icy. The board called me while you were in the air. They're convening an emergency meeting tonight. They can't fire me. I founded the company. They can invoke the moral turpitude clause in your contract. Your stock dropped 18% in the last hour. The teachers' union just pulled a $4 billion contract. You are toxic, Marcus. Sterling hung up. He looked out the window. The London skyline was grey and imposing. For the first time in his life, he felt small. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, the fallout for the crew was less public, but equally devastating. Roger sat in his living room in Queens, the blinds drawn. The news was playing on the TV. His face was blurred in the clips, but his name had leaked. Roger M., lead purser. His phone had been ringing non-stop for hours. Friends, family, other flight attendants. He hadn't answered a single call. He looked at the small box of belongings he had carried out of the airport. A stapler, a photo of his dog, a lanyard with the airline logo. 20 years of flying, 20 years of seniority. Gone in 5 minutes because he was too afraid to say no to a man in a suit. His wife walked into the room. She looked tired. Roger, she said softly. The mortgage payment is due next week. I know, he snapped, then softened. I know. Maybe you can apply to Delta or United. Roger laughed, a dry, bitter sound. I'm blacklisted, honey. Thorne flagged my file in the FAA database for gross misconduct and discriminatory practices. I won't even get hired to drive the baggage cart. I'm done. I'm 50 years old and my career is over. Vanessa was faring even worse. She was younger, obsessed with social media. She had made the mistake of checking her Instagram DMs. Thousands of messages. You're the stewardess who hates kids? Hope you enjoy the unemployment line. Racist. She deactivated her account, her hands trembling. She had always prided herself on being the face of first class, the glamour, the travel. Now, she was the face of everything wrong with the industry. She remembered Maya's face when she mocked the backpack. She remembered the feeling of superiority she had felt. It made her sick to her stomach now. She realized too late that true class wasn't about the price of the ticket. It was about how you treated people. Back in the Sterling Capital offices, the shredders were running. Marcus Sterling burst into the boardroom at 2:00 a.m., looking disheveled. The entire board of directors was there, seated around the mahogany table. They didn't stand up when he entered. Gentlemen, Sterling panted, I can fix this. I'll make a donation. I'll start a scholarship fund for underprivileged youth. We can spin this. The chairman of the board, a man named Arthur, who had been Sterling's mentor, shook his head. It's not just the video, Marcus, Arthur said. sliding a folder across the table. "What is this?" "Thorn Global acquired our debt notes this afternoon," Arthur said heavily. "While you were in the air, Alexander Thorn bought out our primary lenders. He owns our leverage." Sterling felt the room spin. "He bought the debt?" "He called it a strategic acquisition of distressed assets," Arthur said. "He gave us an ultimatum. We either declare bankruptcy immediately, or we terminate you with cause and strip you of all equity." "You can't do that," Sterling screamed. "We already did. The vote was unanimous. You're out, Marcus. Security is waiting to escort you from the building. And Marcus?" Sterling paused at the door, his eyes wild. "Thorn left a message for you," Arthur said. He said, "Tell Marcus that karma flies first class." 6 months had passed since the incident on Flight 808. The world had moved on to new scandals, as the world always does, but for the people involved, the scars were permanent. JFK International Airport was busy as ever. The holiday rush was in full swing. In the basement level of the terminal, near the waste management facility, a man in a grey jumpsuit was pushing a heavy cart of trash bags. He wore a cap pulled low over his eyes. It was Roger. He hadn't been able to find work in aviation, obviously. He hadn't been able to find work in hospitality either. His face was too recognizable for a while, and then the background checks would come back with termination for cause, discriminatory conduct. So, he took the only job that didn't ask questions. He was a janitor at the very airport where he used to command the first-class cabin. He stopped his cart to wipe sweat from his brow. Above him, a large digital billboard flashed an advertisement. It was a sleek, modern ad for Apex Airlines. The image showed a diverse group of young people sitting in the new first-class suites, laughing and comfortable. The tagline read, "Apex Airlines, class is for everyone." And there, in the center of the ad, looking radiant and powerful, was Maya Thorn. She wasn't wearing a suit. She was wearing her hoodie and sneakers, sitting in seat 1A, holding a glass of sparkling water. Roger stared at the image. He felt a pang of regret so sharp it almost brought him to his knees. He realized that he had been the gatekeeper of a club that didn't matter, and in doing so, he had locked himself out of a decent life. He pushed his trash cart forward. He had work to do. Vanessa had moved back to her parents' house in New Jersey. She was working as a receptionist at a dental office. It was quiet, boring work. Every time a patient walked in, she flinched, expecting them to recognize her. One afternoon, a young black teenager walked in for an appointment. She was wearing a backpack covered in patches. Vanessa froze. "Hi," the girl said, smiling. "Checking in for 2:30. Vanessa looked at the backpack. Then she looked at the girl. "I like your bag," Vanessa said, her voice cracking slightly. "Thanks," the girl said. "Here's your paperwork," Vanessa whispered. She treated the girl with the utmost respect, offering her water, making sure she was comfortable. It wasn't much. It wouldn't undo the past, but it was a start. And then there was Marcus Sterling. He wasn't in prison. Wealth usually protects men from cells, but he was in a prison of his own making. He had lost the company. He had lost his reputation. His wife had filed for divorce 3 weeks after the incident, citing irreconcilable differences and taking half of what remained of his fortune. He was currently living in a small rented apartment in Connecticut. He was trying to launch a new consulting firm, but nobody returned his calls. He was radioactive. He sat at his small kitchen table, watching a business news channel. The anchor was interviewing Alexander Thorn. "Mr. Thorn," the anchor asked, "Apex Airlines has seen a 40% increase in revenue since the rebrand. To what do you attribute this success?" Alexander smiled at the camera. "We listened. We realized that the old way of flying, the exclusion, the elitism, was dying. We decided to treat every passenger, whether they pay $100 or $10,000, with the same human dignity. And your daughter? How is she? She's doing great, Alexander said. She's actually heading to college this fall. She's flying commercial, of course. Sterling turned off the TV. He looked at his reflection in the dark screen. He looked old. He looked tired. He realized that he had spent his whole life climbing a ladder, stepping on people to get to the top, only to realize he had leaned the ladder against the wrong wall. The final scene of our story takes place back at JFK, Gate A4. Maya Thorne stood at the podium. She was 18 now, a freshman at Stanford. She was flying out for the semester. She approached the gate agent. It was a new woman, young, with a bright smile. "Boarding pass, please?" Maya held up her phone. "Seat 1A. The agent scanned it. The machine beeped green. "Welcome back, Miss Thorne," the agent said pleasantly. "We have a full flight today, but your suite is ready." Maya walked down the jet bridge. She stepped onto the plane. The crew was new. The vibe was different. It was lighter, friendlier. She walked to seat 1A. She placed her battered canvas backpack on the leather seat. She waited for a reaction. A flight attendant walked by, a young man named Leo. He looked at the bag. He looked at Maya. "Cool patches," Leo said with a genuine smile. "Can I get you a drink before takeoff?" Maya smiled back. It was a smile of victory, not over others, but over the system that had tried to break her. "Sparkling water with lime, please," she said. She sat down and looked out the window as the plane pushed back. She saw the tarmac, the baggage carts, the vast network of the airport. Somewhere out there, the people who had tried to shame her were living with the consequences of their choices. She put on her headphones. She didn't need to be the CEO's daughter today. She didn't need to be a viral sensation. She was just a girl, going to school, taking up the space she deserved. The engines roared to life, a sound of pure power. Maya closed her eyes. This time, she thought, we fly. The story of Maya Thorne and the crew of Flight 808 is a powerful reminder that true status isn't determined by the clothes you wear or the seat you book, but by the character you show when you think no one is watching. Marcus Sterling and the crew made the fatal mistake of judging a book by its cover, assuming that wealth and power only looked a certain way. They learned the hard way that, in the modern world, arrogance is a liability, and dignity is the ultimate currency. Justice was served not just through the loss of their jobs, but through the complete dismantling of their egos. If you enjoyed this story of karma and justice, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new story. Share this video with a friend who needs a reminder that karma is always watching. Thanks for watching.